Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den, with me, your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. As you can see, my ensemble continues to expand the further we go along down into the Alchemist build guide here, and like I said last time, we're going to be taking a look at the Alchemist powers, specifically the class abilities that they get as they level up and advance. Now, normally I try to organize in a fashion that's whatever's best first, and then we kind of progress downwards in terms of quality. But that doesn't quite make sense since we're looking at everything you get from level 1 all the way out to level 20. So the color coding is still going to be present, but it's going to be in the order that you receive your class abilities in. And bear in mind, once again, that the Alchemist character class can be found in the Advanced Player's Guide. It's actually the first one listed because, well, it's alphabetically listed there. And all of this you can find in there. So, let's go ahead and keep this moving along, shall we? Starting us off here for level 1 Alchemist powers, we get Alchemy. Now what this does is this gives you a bonus to your craft alchemy skill equal to your class level. So, if you've been following the build guide so far, the crafting skills all run off of intelligence. So, just base stats, that's an intelligence bonus of a nice +4. And with the class bonus here, that we're sitting at a nice +5. You put 1 skill point into it, we're at 6. And that also unlocks the +3 miscellaneous modifier that you get for putting 1 skill point into a class skill. So right off the bat, at level 1, we have the craft alchemy skill at a nice solid +9. That's really incredible to have right off the bat for a first level character for any skill. So definitely incredibly handy to have here. And it's an okay skill though. It's an okay class ability. The reason for that is that alchemical items tend to not really scale very well when it comes to higher and higher level enemies. The higher the difficulty, the less the effect that you tend to see because, well, things like Tanglefoot bags have difficulties of like DC 13, DC 15 reflex saves, and there's plenty really care if you hit them with one of these things because they can fly, they can hover, they can teleport. They're not bound by just normal physical laws of movement. So yeah, it doesn't scale very well, but for early on, this is handy for generating extra revenue, extra coin for your character by using their craft alchemy skill and running their own shop, or even just being their own carpet bagging, traveling around town to town snake oil salesman. This can be really handy and just adds into your character's background and it's just appropriate flavor wise. It makes absolute sense. But the next ability here that we get at level 1 is the reason why we're here and what we're focusing on, and that is your bombs. Now, the number of bombs you get per day is equal to your intelligence modifier plus your class level, so we're sitting at a nice +5. So 5 bombs for the whole day. It doesn't sound like a lot, but remember that when you're using your bombs, especially early on here, you're only throwing 1 bomb per round because of the length of the action required for mixing and then throwing the bomb. It takes basically your whole turn. But this is what we're focused on building around and what we are going to be expanding and really upping our rate of fire with. They do 1d6 plus your intelligence modifier for damage, and they add 1d6 damage every 2 levels, topping out at 10d6 by level 20. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot, especially when you consider a level 10 wizard will be dealing 10d6 points of damage with a single fireball, and be affecting a pretty broad area. But again, discoveries are going to help with this. Bumping our intelligence modifier up is going to help with this, and the different feats that we can utilize will help increase the rate of fire. So let's move on. Next up is Brew Potion. This is one that I kind of have mixed feelings on, and it really kind of depends on what your DM's willing to allow you to do. Brew Potion is based off of your extracts list up to 3rd level. And remember, extracts are basically spells. And the spell that you use has to be one that can be made into a potion, like Cure Light Wounds, Bull's Strength, things like that. Now, well, the reason why I say it depends on what your DM is allowing you to do. The thing is that potions are the most restrictive form of getting extra magic out of a character. They're expensive. You're limited on what you can do. Just as an example, a wand of Cure Light Wounds is going to give you much more bang for your buck than a single potion of Cure Light Wounds will. A single potion of Cure Light Wounds is, well, as or more expensive than the wand, and it's only single use, whereas the wand, you have 20, 30, however many uses that your DM's willing to let you enchant it with or buy. So the Cure Light Wounds wand will get you much more mileage than a potion will. But if it's still extra magic that you can utilize, and making extra potions, especially if your DM's willing to allow you to find rare materials or reagents, or just gather things along as you're adventuring, maybe even working with the ranger or your wizard to help find those rare ingredients to help offset the monetary costs, then this definitely works from being just kind of an okay thing to have to a pretty solid one. And again, for me, it just seems to fit really nicely. It's a mechanical way of generating roleplay by having your alchemist interact with the rest of your party to gather these materials. So it adds into your character's mechanical benefit, but also has that roleplay value there too. I think this one could be good, but your mileage may vary. But unlike Brew Potion, mutagens, though, are going to be good for you. Some better than others. How this works basically is you create one mutagen that only works for you, does not work for anybody else, even other alchemists. It takes you 1 hour to make, so you're not really going to be doing this in the middle of combat. You need to have this prepared ahead of time. And what it does is it will enhance a physical stat, but at a penalty to an associated mental stat. So if you want to enhance your strength, you're taking a penalty to your intelligence. Dexterity, your wisdom. Constitution, your charisma. Now, most of those you definitely don't want to be applying penalties to your intelligence. We're building everything around bombs, and lowering that means fewer bombs and lower damage. But boosting that dexterity, that's handy. And your wisdom, while wisdom is definitely a weak area, getting hit with something that will trigger a will save while having a penalty on top of it by using your mutagen can be a bit devastating, but boosting that dexterity score, that enhances your ranged attacks, your defense, your initiative, your reflex saves, and some of your skills. So, there's definitely, depending on the situation, you have to do risk assessment. You have to do that cost-benefit analysis thing. If you're going up against a creature that's going to be hitting you with a lot of will save stuff, then, maybe don't do this. But if it's just a target that you can keep hurling bombs at and not have to worry too much about your will saves, or you have somebody who's been buffing you and is protecting you from anything that affects a will save, then, have at it. Go hog wild with this. Speaking of going hog wild, you also get throw anything. You get to throw anything, treat yourself as being proficient with it, and you get to add your intelligence modifier for damage. This is already factored into your bombs and is part of how they work, and this also does work great early on when you're out of bombs to throw, if you're out of bombs to throw. For example, you can use Craft Alchemy to prepare some vials of acid ahead of time, and then with Throw Anything, you are still technically proficient with it. Throw vials of acid at things, burn them because not many creatures have acid resistance, and add in your intelligence modifier for damage on top of it. Well, great, you have another source of damage. Also, acid tends to have some nice utility options like, melting prison bars and the like, damaging armor even, or weaponry. So, keep this one in mind. This is a good ability to have. It's not going to tremendously upset everything, but this will work really good. And then coming around after Throw Anything, we have extracts. Now remember, extracts are your spells, studied from the alchemical formula that your character has. You can't use these on allies, not without taking the infusion discovery, and like other spellcasters, you have to refresh your extracts each day. Essentially, extracts are basically like potions that only work for you, similar to mutagens. The different alchemical materials that are mixed into the vials, they rely on the magical aura, the magical power that your alchemist has in order to work effectively. So when you hand them off, they're rendered inert until they're back in your hands. Now, this draws up some interesting questions. Can you pour a Cure Light Wounds potion down another person's throat? I would argue yes, but rules as written, in order for your extracts to work for somebody else, you need to have the infusion discovery. So, work with your DM on that. I recommend for DMs be flexible with some things, but if you opt to not do that, well, there's at least an option for you to fall back to. And if you're planning on using your extracts to buff and assist your teammates, and you probably should, having the infusion discovery is going to help and keeps this as a good, viable additional ability in your arsenal. But moving on from there, speaking of discoveries, we get discoveries. Now, discoveries are going to warrant their own video, which will be next weekend, hopefully. And you get these opening up for you at 2nd level, and you get to select another discovery every 2 levels after, up until 18th level. And any discovery that requires a saving throw for whichever target you're using it on has a difficulty of 10 plus your intelligence modifier plus 1/2 your alchemist level. And these are absolutely critical for any alchemist build. Bomb thrower, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, anything. Even if you're not going with a specific build, you just want to have an alchemist and have fun, your discoveries are going to be hugely important because they alter how your abilities work. Bombs no longer have to be fire damage. They can be frost, they can be sonic, they can be acid damage, they can have dispel magic effects. These will alter how your extracts work, how your mutagens work. Absolutely critical to have. And going on from there, poison resistance. Now, some of the different build guides I've been reading through rate poison resistance pretty low, and I get why. But this comes in early enough at 2nd level, giving you a +2 fortitude save against poison. This increases again to a 4 at 5th level, which is still pretty nice. That's not an insignificant thing to have at 5th level. And then it goes up to a +6 at 8th level, and finally you get outright immunity to poisons at level 10, which, that's pretty good. Even at level 10, you're still going to be facing off against enough creatures that will use poisons, and you're going to start seeing some of the worst poisons that a character can possibly be dealing with. So this comes in early enough that I think it gets to be fairly useful. But after this point, once you're like 12th, 14th, definitely once you're into 16th to 17th level, the creatures you're going up against aren't really going to be relying on poison a whole lot. There are some notable exceptions, but it's just not going to come up all that frequently. But with that said, this is nothing you have to select. It's not an expendable resource like the discoveries are. This is just something you get for being an alchemist. And it kicks in early enough and ramps up as a bonus consistently enough that I think this stays pretty consistently useful and very helpful for you. So this one gets to be a nice solid green choice for me. It's a good choice. It's a good thing to have. It's not really a choice in this case. But the next one is just kind of okay, and that's poison use. It's nice at 2nd level. You can't accidentally poison yourself when applying poison to a weapon. The problem is there's plenty of enemies that are immune to poison that you find at higher levels as well as low levels. I mean, it's nice that you do use it early when you're more likely to find creatures that are vulnerable to poison, but there's so many low-level creatures out there that just aren't affected by it. You have skeletons, ghouls, zombies, ghasts, ghosts, basically anything that's undead. There aren't many level 2 constructs that you're going up against, but just even the variety of undead creatures there are relatively low level that you could be expected to go up against. But then again, you're just as likely to be facing kobolds, goblins, orcs, elves, dwarves, Durgar, different kinds of animals, dire animals even. Although if you're facing dire animals at level 2, the DM may be hating you, or you've wandered somewhere you shouldn't be. But anyways, poison use, it's not bad, but it's not great either. I guess the big thing with this is that you combined with throw anything, I think keeps this from being just not that great of a thing, because you can poison plenty of different things and then throw it, and if you're using a contact poison, then, well, all you have to do is just hit the target somewhere on an exposed portion of skin, and bam, you've got a shot at poisoning them. So, that can be a viable use for this, although don't expect it to go super far. But moving on from there, we come to Swift Alchemy, which kicks in at 3rd level, and it only takes you half the amount of time it normally takes to create an alchemical item. You also get to apply poison to a weapon as a move action, which, that is actually nice. It's helping with the action economy, and poisons, again, early on, can be a nice way to round out how you're doing damage, particularly if you run out of bombs. And creating alchemical items much faster, that is actually nice. I think this kind of makes sense. This could be just kind of an okay ability, but I actually don't mind it. I like it. This fits with an alchemist, and it comes in, again, early enough that I think this maintains a good deal of use for at least the first handful of levels, probably up to about level 10 or so, when you're going to not see as many creatures vulnerable to poison like you did earlier on. But then, again, coming after there, we have swift poisoning. At 6th level, you can poison a weapon as a swift action, and that's all this does. Whereas Swift Alchemy before got you 2 nifty things that it did, and at 3rd level, no less. This one is just kind of okay. Again, it helps with the action economy if you're that concerned with poisoning weapons, but our bomb damage is advancing. We're getting different feats to help us throw more bombs, and we're not too far off from unlocking the fast bombs discovery at level 8. So that's where you're really going to see a lot of the damage output really start to take off for this particular build. But anyways, moving on from that, Persistent Mutagen. This doesn't unlock until level 14, but it's still really nice. This for a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde build that's focusing more on the mutagens. This is definitely a blue, and it's probably going to be the cornerstone thing for your build. Because what this does is this expands the effect of a mutagen to 1 hour per level, and you're level 14, so that's 14-hour-long mutagen effects. Yes, please. This is incredible. It's great to have. But, we move on from there. Not everything is all sunshine and roses, sunshine and daisies, whatever the saying is. Instant Alchemy. At 18th level, you can create alchemical items as a full round action if you have the necessary materials on hand. And you can apply poison to a weapon as an immediate action. I mean, whoop-de-doo. This very easily could be read, except for the fact that you are making these items as a full round action. I mean, you can have instant Tanglefoot bags, instant Thunderstones, which is actually, they are useful items. But this kind of strikes me as more of a filler ability. It's nice to have, but at 18th level, everything you're fighting is really not going to be bothered by alchemical items, and applying poison to a weapon as an immediate action, honestly, this ability is actually probably kind of not that great. I could probably even mark this as kind of red, red and yellowish, because it's flavorful, it's nice, it makes sense, and I love that. Especially, you have this alchemical genius, this experienced veteran of the field, 18th level, just whipping up these items. This would work perfectly for a dude working in a shop, like some gal that's running her own little alchemist laboratory in a major city, and it's just pumping out all these items for these new, younger adventuring groups. Absolutely wonderful to have, just because you just do it so fast, over and over. But that's from a purely mechanical standpoint. Considering what the Alchemist is going to be up against at level 18, these aren't going to do much for you. Not in a practical combat context. Outside of that, wonderful. But anyways, going on from there to our level 20 capstone ability is Grand Discovery, and this is awesome. It's a good capstone ability. You get 2 more discoveries, plus you get to select a Grand Discovery, and none of the Grand Discovery options are bad either. They're just varying degrees of good to awesome. But most campaigns aren't really going to reach this unless you're starting out somewhere near it, or making a level 20 character to begin with. And things like Grand Discovery, the stuff like you're making a Philosopher's Stone. You are just unlocking so many, well, I say so many, it's about 6 or 7 choices, but still incredible things to have on hand and absolutely good abilities. And just the fact that you get to select 2 more discoveries with this one is awesome. Absolutely great to have. So, you can't go wrong with Grand Discovery and all the benefits it has for you. But that about wraps up the Alchemist abilities. There's really not much more to go on with here. The only way this really changes up is if you're selecting a different archetype, or if there's some third-party variation that you want to run with. But the number of those are just so many, and we could spend so much time on that alone that I'm probably not really going to mention that a whole lot. Maybe when we wrap up the Alchemist guide overall, I might mention a few that I think would really work well or complement this Mad Bomber build, this crazed bomb-chucking madman. But at any rate, I hope you have enjoyed today's video. If you disagree on any particular point, please go down to the comments down below. I'd love to engage in discussion on this. I'd love to know your thoughts and find out what you are doing to tweak or adjust or just have in mind for your own particular builds regarding the Alchemist. It's a very fun class, and as Daigle May had pointed out, it's one that gets overlooked pretty frequently. I've overlooked it myself a number of different times, but digging into it for this build guide, I've definitely had a much more keen interest brought about and want to use this class more. So please, if you enjoyed this video or disagree or just want to voice your own opinions, please go down to the comments below. Be glad to have you there. But with that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. You all have yourselves a good night.